Thank you for coming to my reading tonight. Tonight I'm going to be reading a story from Eda Blessed II, which is the second book of collection of stories by Omari Ket. I hope some of you guys have had a chance to read the first book. It was a collection of stories which was like some of the stories were already written, had come from been previously published, and others were actually new stories. This collection of story is actually 10 completely new stories about Omari Ket and his adventures. And this book is basically in the same pattern as the first book, whereas the stories jump from Omari when he was a Mikajan mercenary to when he was on his own. This particular story takes place when Omari is kind of hitting on hard times here. He has been I say out of work for a while, and and has decided to do a little extra in order to make ends meet. Omari doesn't consider himself a thief. However, in this case, when you need to make that money, you need to make it. So that's what this story is all about. The title of this story is The Jeweler and the Rogue. So let's get into it. Omari ambled down the mud-packed streets of Kunis, a torch in his right hand as he tugged at the collar of his tunic with his left. He cursed himself for not finding a better tailor for his uniform, but his options had been limited. There were very few seamsters willing to counterfeit a constable's uniform, and it came at a high price. He still wasn't sure if it would have been prudent to kill the man, but it was too late now. The plan was in motion. There was no turning back. Omari crept into the merchant district, making his way to his objective. For weeks he'd studied all movements in and out of the compound. He memorized the servants coming and going, deliveries and market trips. He even knew when the inhabitants relieved themselves. All the scrutiny led to this moment, his window of opportunity. If all went well, he would be a very rich man in a few hours. Omari didn't consider himself a thief, but with the end of the war between Asanteman and Oyo, there were plenty of warriors seeking work as bodyguards and mercenaries, making the opportunities for a foreigner with a strange tattoo on his back rather slim. Omari would use the stacks to travel back west, where political intrigue and squabbles kept someone with his skills busy and well paid. He doused his torch, then slipped into a nearby alley. He watched as the last of the servants exited the compound, then listened as the gate was locked behind them. The compound's owner was so protective of his wealth that he didn't allow any of his servants to spend the night in the compound, not even his bodyguards. He trusted the diligence of the constables to keep him safe during the night. That was his mistake. Omari had 2 hours before the real constable would make his appearance. He emerged from the alley as the final servant faded into the darkness. Omari sprinted to the wall. He lifted his tunic and unraveled the rope around his waist. He leaned against the wall, then lifted his shirt again, this time pulling the grappling hook free that he tucked in the back of his pants. He secured the grappling hook to the rope, then threw it over the wall. Omari yanked the rope, making sure the hook was secure, before pulling himself up, then over the top of the wall. He pulled up the rope, then used it to scale down the wall into the courtyard. Omari ran across the open space to the veranda. The door to the house was easy to open. He climbed the stairs to the upper level of the home as quietly as possible, then tipped his way into the room at the end of the hall. To his delight, the door was unlocked. He opened it, then found himself standing face to face with another burglar. Omari ducked the interloper's wild swing, then tackled the man into the treasure room. They grappled on the floor, each reaching for the other's throat. Omari rammed his forearm into the opponent's neck, then reached for the dagger tucked in his sash. He pulled the blade free, then plunged it into his foe's ribs. The person jerked, then gasped as Omari stabbed him a second time, and then a third, pressing him hard until he ceased moving. Omari was standing when firelight washed over him. "What is this?" a startled voice said. "What is happening?" Omari turned toward the voice, the bloody dagger in his hand. Kwaku Apia, jewel merchant and owner of the compound, stood in the doorway, an oil lamp in his quivering hand. He stared at Omari, a confused expression on his round face. "Constable, What are you doing in my house? How did you get inside? I, Omari began. Kwaku came closer with his lamp, looking past Omari to the dead man on the floor. He gasped. Efum? Kwaku looked to Omari, then to Efum, the dead man on his floor. His confused expression gave way to a scowl. I should have known, Kwaku said. I always thought there was something suspicious about him, always asking about how many jewels I acquired during my safaris whenever I returned. I see you suspected him too. Yes. Yes, I did, Omari replied. Is he dead? Kwaku asked. Yes, Omari replied. Good. Anyone trying to steal from me deserves no less. Kwaku spat on Efum's body. I assume you'll make arrangements to dispose of his body, Kwaku asked. Yes, Omari answered. I'll do it right away. Thank you. I wouldn't want to wait until the morning. I'll open the gates for you. Kwaku went to get his gate key. Omari rushed into the treasure room, grabbed a handful of jewels, then stuck them into his pouch. He lifted Efum onto his shoulders as Kwaku returned. Follow me, Kwaku said. Omari followed the jeweler to the gate. Thank you again for your diligence, Kwaku said. Any time, Omari replied. He walked through the gate. Constable! Omari closed his eyes and exhaled before turning. Yes? How were you able to enter my compound? Efum used a rope to climb your wall, Omari said. He left the rope dangling. That's how I suspected something was wrong. I climbed the rope, then followed his trail inside. I'm glad you were nearby, Kwaku said. Will you return in the morning to make sure nothing is missing? Yes, I will, Omari said. Good. It will save me a trip to the constable's house to congratulate you. I'll come back at first light, Omari said. I'll be waiting, Kwaku replied. Of course you will, Omari whispered. What was that? I said, of course you should. Omari walked into the street with Efum's body. He would have to carry it a ways before dumping it into an alley. Constable! Kwaku called out. By Darla's beard, Omari hissed. He composed himself before turning. Yes? What is your name? Kofi, Omari replied. It was the only Asante name he knew. Thank you, Kofi. See you tomorrow. Omari nodded, then hurried away. He had to move quickly before the true constable made his rounds. He slipped into the first alley he came to, thankful for the darkness. Omari moved from alley to alley like a stray feline until he reached the river. He dumped Efum's body into the waters, hoping the strong current would take it out to the ocean before dawn. Hurrying back to his small hut, Omari lit the palm wax candle on his table, then poured out the contents of his bag. Cleave, he said. There were barely enough baubles to get him to the next town, let alone across Kakanga. The night had been a waste. He would have to make do with what he was able to obtain. But then he remembered Kwaku's words, and a grin came to his face. See you tomorrow. If he visited the jeweler the next day, he'd have another chance to get more jewels. It was a risk, but it was worth it. Omari put the trinkets back into the bag, then extinguished the candle. He needed to make the best of what little time he had to sleep. The next day would be very eventful. Omari waited at Kwaku's gate with his servants. They looked at him with nervous expressions, no doubt wondering why the constable was calling on the merchant so early in the morning. Omari tapped his foot, hoping the true constable did not appear before he was allowed inside. His good luck won out. Kwaku appeared with his keys, unlocked the gate, and let the workers in. He smiled when he saw Omari. Constable, you're here early. Omari shook Kwaku's arm. I wanted to make sure everything was okay. Last night must have been a terrible experience for you. I've seen worse, Kwaku said. My profession is full of danger. There's always someone scheming to take what's not theirs instead of putting in a good day's work. Indeed, Omari replied. Come, join me for breakfast, Kwaku offered. Omari's stomach growled. I'll be delighted to. Omari scowled as he followed Kwaku to the veranda. It was as if the merchant's words were meant for him. His foul mood dissipated when he saw the food spread out on the table. He now knew the reason for Kwaku's full cheeks and plump stomach. "Sit and enjoy," Kwaku said. Omari didn't hesitate. Kwaku laughed as he watched Omari eat. "You have quite an appetite," he commented. "A constable's pay only goes so far," Omari replied. "I can imagine," Kwaku said. "Which brings me to the real reason why I asked you here." "How can I help you?" Omari asked with a mouthful of bread. "I'm planning a safari to Ile-Ife in a few days. There's a shipment I need to deliver." Omari washed down his food with a gourd of water. "Really?" "Yes," Kwaku said. "I have acquired the services of a security merchant, but I would feel much better if I had someone of true authority and integrity overseeing them. I'm wondering if the Constable Guild would spare you for a few days." "I believe it would be possible," Omari said. "I'll pay you well," Kwaku continued. "It's a route I don't travel often. I'm afraid with the end of the war, many warriors have taken to thievery to fill their pockets." "That's such a shame," Omari said. "I am at your service, Bua Kwaku." "Excellent," Kwaku said. "I insist that you stay at my compound until we leave." "Will that be a problem?" "I'll have to let my commander know," Omari said. "I'll leave to gather my things and return, if I get permission." "Outstanding," Kwaku replied. "Please, eat your fill. I'm looking forward to our safari together." Omari ate almost everything at the table. The morning guard led him through the gate, and he hurried back to his hovel. This was too good to be true. Kwaku was practically putting the jewels in his pouch. Omari rubbed his stomach on the way back. He hadn't eaten so well in months. It didn't take him long to grab his meager items and stuff them into a bag. He returned to the compound and was greeted at the gate by one of Kwaku's servants. "Welcome back, Kofi," the servant said. "Who?" "Oh, yes, thank you," Omari replied. "Bua Kwaku ordered me to show you to your room. Follow me." The servant led Omari to Kwaku's home and the bedchamber on the first floor. This was a true honor. To be allowed into a merchant's home was a sign of respect and trust. Omari didn't know who was praying for him, but he hoped they continued. He spent the day lounging around the compound. As the servants became distracted with their duties, he made his way to his objective, Kwaku's treasure room. The door was open. Omari stepped inside to admire Kwaku's collection. He had never seen so much wealth in one room, except in Kiswala. There was so much he didn't know where to start. "Is everything in order, Constable?" Kwaku stood behind him, his chubby fingers gripping the sash. "It seems to be," Omari replied. "I haven't had time to check my inventory," Kwaku said. "For all I know, Efun's been stealing from me all along." Kwaku waved his hands as if swatting a fly, then walked away. "I don't have time now. I must prepare for the safari." Omari stared at the stacks of jewels, his mouth watering. "Is there something else, Kofi?" Kwaku asked. No, nothing at all." "Good. I would like you to meet the guards I hired," Kwaku said. "I've done this many times, but I might as well use your expertise since I'm paying for it." Kwaku laughed as he descended the stairs. Omari thought of shoving him down the steps, then returning to grab a handful of jewels, but there would be too many witnesses. Instead, he trudged downstairs to meet the guards. The compound courtyard was filled with the arriving pack animals and servants in preparation for the safari. Kwaku led Omari to a group of armed warriors milling at the gate. Omari recognized most of them as former soldiers, but two of them stood out. They were mercenaries, men he had worked with in the past. They saw him and their eyes widened. Omari shook his head and they responded, looking away. Kwaku led him to a heavy-set man wearing a leather kilt and a leopard skin shirt. "Kofi, this is Manu," Kwaku said. He is the commander of these guards. I've used him a number of times, and he served me well." Manu extended his arm, and Omari took it. "I'm Constable Kofi," Omari said. "I'm familiar with most of our constables," Manu replied. "I don't know you." "I haven't been here long," Omari said. "That would explain it," Manu replied. "Kwaku told me you will oversee our safari, although I don't see why this is necessary." "An added precaution," Kwaku said. "As I said before, it has no bearing on your skill or my trust of you, Manu. I find Kofi's presence comforting. Mono didn't seem convinced. Comforting? Mono frowned. You see your companion? This is my decision, Kwaku said. It would be disruptive if I have to replace you, but I will if you persist. Mono scowled. So be it. He stepped up to face Omari. My warriors do not take orders from you, he said. If you have any need of them, you come to me. Understand? Omari placed his palm on Manu's chest and pushed him away. I take orders from Kwaku, he said, and I doubt if I have any use for your rabble. That's settled then, Kwaku said. Kofi, come with me. We must make sure everything is in order. Omari followed Kwaku, his mood dark as they expected the servants, wagons, and supplies for the safari. This situation was becoming more complicated every second. Once again, he considered marching to the jewel room, grabbing as much as he could carry, then fleeing for the bush. But that was a rash decision that would most likely end up with him dead. This safari was a perfect way for him to get what he sought. It would be easy to take the jewels while on the road and disappear. Besides, there was no need to be in a hurry despite Manu's attitude and the other two men's suspicions. He was being paid and fed, which was a marked improvement from a few weeks ago. Kwaku and Omari ended their inspection, then parted ways. The next time they would see each other would be at the morning for the beginning of the safari. Omari was heading for his room when the two men from Manu's force approached him. Ket, one of the men said. A word. Omari sighed, then turned to meet them. Chimani, Masimba, what do you want? Chimani stepped close to him. The bald man gripped his belt and smirked. He was as tall as Omari, but soft in places where Omari was firm. Still, he was a skilled fighter and a dangerous man. Same thing you want, he said. Since when did you become a constable? He's not, Masimba said. Masimba sauntered to the opposite side of Omari. He was a head taller than Chimani, a lean ebony-skinned man and master grappler. Omari put distance between him and the two. Don't worry about why I'm here, Omari replied. Just stay out of my way. I wonder what Kwaku would think if he knew you were just a common rogue like us, Chimani replied. He'd toss him out of the compound, no doubt, Masimba answered. Call the real constables and have him beaten and locked up. Omari folded his arms across his chest. Like I said before, what do you want? An even split, Chimani said. We figure whatever you're planning is going to be big. We'll keep quiet and you do the work. I guess you're planning to take what you can to disappear during the safari, Masimba said. A good, simple plan. Omari glared at them both. His right hand fell to his sword hilt, as did Chimani and Masimba. Chimani seemed unperturbed. Masimba's hand trembled. Agreed, Omari said. He turned to walk away, then drew his sword and spun around, cutting Chimani's throat. Masimba scrambled backward, attempting to draw his sword, but Omari was too quick. He drove his sword into the man's chest and cut his throat as he fell to the ground. Someone yelled, and in moments Omari was surrounded by servants. Mono pushed through the crowd. He looked at Chimani and Masimba's bodies and confronted Omari. Why in Darla's name did you do this? He said. Kwaku appeared moments later. Kofi, what's the meaning of this? I know these men, Omari said. They're thieves. My guess is that they were planning to rob you once the safari was underway. He shifted his eyes to Manu. Did you know these two well? Manu swallowed before speaking. No, I didn't. I needed 2 more warriors to fill Kwaku's request and they were available. That was irresponsible, Omari said. You jeopardized all of our lives. This comes out of your pay, Manu, Kwaku said. I'll send for more constables to clean up this mess. No need, Omari said. I'll handle this. I need a wagon and an ass. Kwaku sent the servant for the wagon and the beast. The other servants loaded the bodies onto the wagon, then covered them with canvas. Omari led the beast from the compound and into the streets. Once again, he made his way to the river's edge, waiting until he was alone before dumping the bodies into the swift currents. As he made his way back to the compound, Omari decided he'd had enough of this charade. The first chance he had during the safari, he would take whatever he could stuff in his bag and abscond. He'd make do with whatever he had. The morning came and the safari began. Omari rode at the lead with Kwaku. Mano and his warriors were scattered along the train of animals and wagons. They set a brisk pace once they were clear of the village, only stopping to eat and rest. Day after day passed, but Omari could not find the perfect opportunity to execute his plan. Manu seemed determined to make up for the lack of judgment for choosing Chimani and Masimba. Security around the gold wagons were extremely tight, Manu and his guards running 24-hour shifts. They were getting closer to their destination. If Omari didn't make his move soon, he would end up with nothing. A week away from their destination, Kwaku summoned Omari to his tent to join him for dinner. The two sat opposite from each other at the table that had no reason to be in the bush other than Kwaku's extravagant request. Kwaku prattled on about nothing while Omari picked at his food. "My friend, what bothers you?" Kwaku asked. "We have almost reached our destination without incident." "I'm aware of that," Omari replied. "Then you should be happy," Kwaku said. "My mood is because this journey will soon come to an end," Omari said. Kwaku burst out laughing. "I didn't take you for the sarcastic type," he said. "But if it will make you feel better, I have one more task for you." Omari glanced up from his plate. "What is it?" "I need to send someone ahead to prepare for our arrival," Kwaku said. "I can think of no one better than you." "What about Manu?" Omari asked. "He's preoccupied with making up for his bad judgment." Omari huffed. Another opportunity wasted. "What must I do?" Kwaku opened a box resting by his left hand, then took out a solid gold bar imprinted with the Adinkra hanging from the silver chain. He handed the necklace to Omari. "You will take this into the city tomorrow. Once you arrive, go to the marketplace, then put on the necklace. It identifies you as my representative. A member from the Merchant Guild will contact you and take you to my partners. They will arrange safe passage for us through the city." A smile came to Omari's face as he admired the necklace. This was the moment he was waiting for. The necklace itself was worth enough to fill his pockets with stacks and pay his way back to the east. He gave the necklace back to Kwaku. "When do I leave?" "At first light," Kwaku said. "The journey will take 2 days at least. If all goes well, you and the others will reach us by nightfall on the 3rd day." "Everything will be fine," Omari said. "This I promise." "I hope so," Kwaku said. "The success of this safari depends on it." Omari's appetite returned and he ate with enthusiasm. He found it hard to sleep in anticipation of the next day. When the morning came, he jumped from his bed and donned his uniform. He hurried to the animal corral and selected the best horses, then made his way to Kwaku's tent. The merchant was waiting, having his breakfast outside his tent. "You are punctual. Excellent." Kwaku stood with the case holding the necklace. He handed it to Omari, who put it in his waist bag. "Remember, don't put it on until you reach the market district," Kwaku said. "Safe travels, Kofi." Omari bowed, climbed onto the black Sokoto, then rode away, holding the reins of the Malian warhorse. His plan was simple. He would ride to the town, but he would never meet with the merchants. Sadiba Lake was a few miles beyond his destination. Omari would go to the nearest port, sell the horses and the necklace, then take a dhow across the sea. He was tempted to visit Sadiba, but he was not certain if his banishment was still being enforced. It was safer to sail to Hasset. The time to go home would come later. Omari munched on hard bread, enjoying the peaceful ride. The Sokoto was a gentle horse, and the Malian was behaving. They climbed a steep rise and entered a section of the bush populated with trees whose canopies were tangled with vines. The undergrowth was sparse, a sight unusual for the bush of this region. Omari reached into his food pouch and frowned when he discovered it empty. He shrugged and whistled to pass the time. The Sokoto stopped. Omari tugged at his rein, but it refused to move. "Come on, beast," Omari said. "Move!" The Sokoto neighed and shifted, its large head swinging from side to side. The Malian snorted, pounding his hooves into the packed dirt. What in the cleave is? The Sokoto reared and Omari tumbled from his back. He hit the ground hard, the blow knocking the wind out of him. He watched the horse gallop by the Malian, running back to where it came. The Malian stood his ground, snorting and pounding his front hooves. Omari struggled to his feet. Something was coming. He heard a piercing screech, then was lifted off of his feet. Sharp talons bent into his shoulders and he yelped in pain. He twisted his head upward and stared into the monstrous face of an Asabasam. Its primal eyes met Omari's terrified stare, its huge fangs dripping Omari's blood. The creature lifted Omari into the vines and attempted to bite his throat. Omari jerked his head away, then hit the creature where his temple should be with his fist. The creature screeched again, letting him go. Omari fell and hit the ground, the air whooshing from his lungs. The Ngisi sparked, his back warming as his shoulder wound healed. As he scrambled away from the beast attacking him, he heard the Malian neighing frantically. Asambasam surrounded the beast. The horse kicked and stomped, but they continued to come, running from within the woods and falling from the trees like hulking rain. Omari attempted to flee, but was suddenly surrounded by a score of beasts that fell from the treetops. He decapitated the first beast to reach him, then winced as another beast bit his calf. Omari stabbed it through the head, then ducked as another beast jumped toward him. He rolled to a clear space, coming to his feet in time to meet the savage onslaught. Omari slashed, stabbed, kicked, and cursed his way through the vicious attack, pushing back fatigue and the fear of being eaten alive. His Ngisi burned, healing energy surging throughout his body, attempting to seal the tears and bites destroying his flesh. Omari kept killing, but the beast kept coming. His legs gave way and he fell to his knees, refusing to succumb to the weakness spreading throughout him. Another chorus of sharp barks reached Omari's ears, and it took everything in him not to be swallowed by despair. The tree beast froze, then ran. Moments later, a large pack of wild dogs surged by Omari in pursuit. The Asambasams were now prey, chased by the small but voracious canines. They swarmed the beasts before they could climb to safety, dragging them down to their deaths. Omari staggered into the bush, the pain of his wounds and healing forcing him to hide. The dogs paid him no attention, so focused they were on killing and consuming the tree beast. Omari slumped against a tree, allowing the enchanted tattoo to do his work. He was dozing off when a growl snapped his eyes open. A wild dog stared at him, one much larger than the others. Omari reached for his sword, then stopped. There was something odd about the way the dog looked at him, something that told him that he was not in danger. The dog inched closer, Omari's grip tightening on his sword hilt. The dog's nose flared, and Omari's chest scar itched. His ears perked up, then it let out a sharp bark and trotted away. Omari touched his scar, the wound he received long ago in Wadantu. Eda Blessed, he whispered. Omari kept his diligence until the sound of the feasting dogs lessened. He waited a moment longer before allowing the Ngisi to pull him into a dreamless sleep. The sound of animals and people pulled Omari back to consciousness. He sat up, then stood, pushing through the dull ache in his wounds. Trudging through the trees, he stepped into the road and gazed toward the sound. It was Kwaku's group. The lead rider galloped up to him, his spear lowered. He raised it when he recognized Omari, despite his ragged state. "It's Kofi!" the man shouted. The guards hurried to him, Mono the last to arrive. He looked at Omari in wonder. "We saw the carcasses and assumed you were dead," Mono said. "How did you survive that slaughter?" Omari shrugged. "I was lucky." "Make way! Make way!" Kaku rolled into the gathering. He clambered off his horse, ran to Omari, and hugged him like a long-lost child. "Praise to Eda!" he shouted. "I'm so happy to see you alive. I was afraid I would have to waste good gold to bury you." Omari chuckled. "I'm happy to save you the expense." Kwaku's expression turned serious. "Speaking of gold, do you still have the ingots?" Omari's bag still hung from his shoulder. He reached inside and extracted the box. "Excellent," Kwaku said. "Manu, get Kofi to a wagon. He must rest and heal." Omari followed Mono to a supply wagon, then climbed inside. The commander looked at him skeptically. "You're a lucky man, Constable," he said. "Very lucky." Omari laid back and grinned. As Kwaku said, Eda Blessed. They arrived in the city at dusk. Kwaku took the lead as they made their way to the market and met with the merchant guild. Omari was sent to their guild house where a healer tended to his wounds and provided him with fresh garments. He was sipping on a healing concoction when Kwaku entered the room. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Better," Omari replied. "I'll be ready to return by morning." Kwaku grinned. "Oh, you won't be returning with us. But that was never your plan, was it, Omari Ket?" Omari's eyes went wide. "I don't know who—" "Oh, please, you can stop now," Kwaku said. "I knew who you were the moment I saw you in my house that night. A rogue with a healing tattoo can't keep himself secret." Omari smirked. "I guess not." He sat up in the bed. "If you knew who I was, then why did you let this go on?" Kwaku leaned into his chair. "To be honest, I didn't think I was going to survive the night. Your encounter with Ephraim was pure chance. I knew why you both were there, and I was sure one of you were going to kill me. I said all those things about you saving me praying to Eda that you would accept the ruse, and you did." "Yes, I did," Omar replied. "I saw a chance to take more, as I hoped you would." Kwaku pulled a chaga pipe from his robe. He lit it, took a puff, then offered it to Omari. Omari took the pipe and took a long pull. This was good chaga. "You discovering the other rogues was my good fortune," Kwaku continued. "The rest, I must confess, was my doing." Omari handed the pipe back to Kwaku. "What do you mean you're doing?" "I never intended to come here," he said. "I have always traded with the Egbado because the road to Il Ife was too dangerous. The Asabasan made it so." "You knew about them?" Omari felt his anger rising. "Yes," he said. "When you showed up, I figured if anyone could survive an encounter with them, it would be you. So I sent you ahead with the ingot. To be honest, I didn't expect you to return. I figured you'd either fail or clear the way and die in the process." "The cleave take you," Omari said. Kwaku raised his hand. "I understand your anger, and there's nothing I can do to keep you from killing me right now. Except this." Kwaku clapped his hands. A servant entered the room with a large box. He placed the box on the bed and opened it. It was filled with stacks. "Your payment," Kwaku said. Omari's anger shriveled to the size of an ant. "This safari made me extremely wealthy. Ile Ife was always a more lucrative market. Now that I don't have to worry about the bloodsuckers, I can plan to visit more often. I have you to thank for it." Kwaku stood. "I've arranged for your stay with the guild until you are well enough to travel." Kwaku gave Omari another box. Inside was the ingot. "Something to remember the safari by, although knowing you, it will all be gone by the next moon." "I guess I should thank you, but based on what you did, I won't," Omari said. "Fair enough," Kwaku replied. "Goodbye, Omari Ket. Safe travels." "Safe travels to you, Kwaku," Omari said. Omari ran his fingers through the stacks as Kwaku left the room. "This will last more than one moon," Omari said to himself. 3 at least." He climbed out of the bed and began dressing in the clothes left for him near his bed. He was wealthy for a moment. He had much to do. And that's it, The Merchant and the Rogue. I hope you guys enjoyed it. For some odd reason, I can't see any comments if you guys had any. This is a story from Eda Blessed II. It is currently available for pre-order from MV Media, Amazon, or wherever books are sold. So you can go and order your books today. It will be officially released on June 19th, Juneteenth. So I hope you guys will take a chance and go pick it up. Again, this is Milton Davis from MV Media, and I hope you enjoyed the reading, and we'll be seeing you soon. Peace.